After this session, basically starting tomorrow, money just shows up in your account, and that's it.
Is
Well,
are
glad I
you
showed up for
actually
this
just a
one.
magic genie?
Yeah, that's it, man. We're going to talk about how automations and AI have just basically made money appear in people's accounts, so we don't have to do anything anymore. So it's good times.
You sound like my TikTok feed right now.
It's exactly what it is, man. All these people with their $9.99 a month offerings offering you absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's gonna make me millions without doing anything, just by signing
Exactly.
up.
Well, the thing is, all this stuff we're going to talk about makes your life a lot easier. However, there is some work involved at the beginning too. So don't believe this is some silver bullet to feed the laziness bone that we all have within us sometimes.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, let's get it kicked off. First off, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan Wykes. I am the CPO at North Group and partnered with Amy. I am here today and honored to have our awesome guest, Ara Mamourian. For those of you who do not know Ara leads a top producing team in the Toronto real estate market. And the awesome thing about Ara is he's been able to build that team and expand into other subsidiary markets and expand the team with very little help from other people. And when I mean other people, I mean very little staffing help. He's probably got the same staff size as many teams that are probably a third or a tenth of the size of him, and is able to grow and expand because Ara is always at the forefront of something new, probably buying a lot of things too early and paying too much money before they're even useful. But on the flip side of that, that has allowed Ara to, with technology and with automations, be able to be at the forefront and help leverage new things into his business before other people even know they exist. And the great thing that I love about what Ara does is a lot of these things you do not need to be a techie to implement into your business. A lot of people just don't even know they exist, and a lot of them are super simple for you to use. So, Ara, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for that great introduction, man. I really appreciate that. It's nice to hear about you from other people's mouths sometimes, especially when we get in our heads sometimes and play these negative stories out. It's nice to be lifted up by other people sounding off about you. So it's a nice reminder. So thank you.
Of course.
So just to dig in, just go for it. Is that my cue?
Yeah, let's jump in. So, I mean, I
Okay.
know
All right.
we kind of chatted about this, and I wanted to just first jump in of like, what is, everyone right now is obsessed with AI, right? And obsessed with
Yeah.
automations and like, how can I make my business easier on myself?
All right. Let's
What would
talk
you
about it.
say the first step before going out there and trying to learn all of these new tools or implement tools that you don't even know how to use or if they will work in your business? What is the first step that you think everyone on this call needs to take before taking the plunge and investing a bunch of their time, money, and resources into automations and AI?
That's a great question. And it's almost like you were looking at a text I sent you earlier. I like that. Um, so,
I'm
so
organized for once in my life.
hey, and that's on the topic of what we're going to talk about right now is getting organized first. So listen, I've spent the past year spending a lot of money and using a lot of my time on this stuff so you don't have to essentially. I didn't do that on purpose. It's just where we are right now and I've learned a lot. Now, the first thing that I think a lot of people need to understand in this space is to ask the right questions at the beginning and to get yourself organized with exactly what you're trying to do versus responding to some sort of TikTok video or Instagram reel or something you saw with somebody telling you that they can make your life easier by doing whatever they've laid out as their X, Y, and Z. That's a mistake that I made quite a bit over the past year is I would really buy into that immediate hook that these vendors have, and they're everywhere. So if you're on TikTok or Instagram and there are people that are saying, I can do this, this, and that for you, and you won't have to do anything, I would immediately question the you don't have to do anything part of it, because the first thing that's really important to do here is to get yourself organized so you can ask the right questions. And what I mean by that is everybody loves AI, everybody loves or wants to know, how to handle all these things, but what are they applying to? What is the missing piece in your business that needs this kind of attention? What are those repetitive tasks in your business that need this kind of attention? So to help drill that down a little bit further, we're all in real estate here, and safe to assume that we all work with buyers, sellers. Here in Toronto, we work with a lot of landlords and tenants as well. And then, of course, each business has an administrative side, right? So we've got buyers, sellers, admin, and landlords and tenants in there too. Each one of those is a bucket of workflows, a bucket of tasks, a bucket of processes. So first, if you don't even have any processes that you repeat for buyers or sellers, then you can't have anything automate something you don't have. Okay, so the very first thing you need to do is identify, let's use like buyers as an example. There's a certain workflow that is relatively similar no matter who the buyer is you're working with, right? There's always going to be showings booked or mortgage people and lawyers and whoever else communicated with. There's a basic foundation to working with all buyers in terms of how paperwork is submitted to your office, et cetera. So the very, very, very first thing that I would do is bust out a sheet of paper or an Excel sheet or however it is you organize stuff in your head and write down buyer, write down seller, write down investor, write down whatever it is you work with, whatever it is, buyers, sellers, whoever it is you predominantly work with, and then identify the specific workflows that are required in each one of those things. So when you first meet a buyer, when somebody reaches out saying they're interested in buying, what does your process look like? Do you have the very basic automation in place that says, hey, book yourself directly into my calendar using this Calendly link? Right? So the first thing I would do is organize yourself that way, is make sure there's an easy way for people to book appointments directly into your calendar. And the reason I mention that is because you're probably already using a lot of AI and a lot of automation technology. You don't even realize it. Like within Calendly, for example, when somebody books an appointment with us, you immediately get an email that has a 7-minute video of me talking about what their experience is going to be during the call. And it also has a breakdown of a lot of things that a first-time buyer, as an example, might need to know, or an experienced buyer might need to know. So then they come to that meeting armed with a little bit more information. So that automation, that effort allows us to start the conversation a little further along. It helps the person understand that we're a professional group that understands this process and respects people's time. So do you guys have any questions around that? Because I do want to turn this into a bit of a Q&A as we go along, but this is the most basic thing, right? I mean, that's the kind of, when we say automations and when we say AI, or that's one of the things that fit into that box. Does everybody understand that concept of just how to make it easy for people to book time with you?
I have a question, and I
Yes.
hope it doesn't sound dumb, but I'm gonna just humble myself
Ask
and
it.
ask it.
Yeah.
So if you have if you have varying roles in your job, do you just set up different Calendly accounts depending on, like, if I'm talking to agents, for example, like I run a real
Yes.
estate team, so often I'm talking to agents about joining our team, and then I sell real estate, so I'm often talking to buyers and sellers. Would you just have different Calendly links that then go to, because I'm obsessed with the video idea and I just wrote that down. So how would you do that? And I'm sorry if
Yes,
I sound dumb.
No, it's absolutely not dumb. And I think this is very helpful for people, especially if you don't even know if you're in a system like that. So, and again, we're in the same boat, Amy, where I have a team I'm responsible for, and then clients, right? And then everything in between. There's a separate meeting type for each type of meeting. So if somebody wants to interview with the spring team to see if we're a fit for them to hang their hat here and sell some real estate with us, there's a link for that. With that, there's, our sample contract, or sorry, not our contract, but like some basic, like who we are and what we expect of team agents and what we give to team agents, like that kind of comes out first. But then there's another link for people to book a buyer appointment with us, which has our guide go out first. And then, if there's enough lead time between the appointment booking and the actual buyer consultation, then they get some other pieces of information too. So then the meeting starts with that agent or with that buyer or even that seller, with them having some context already. So then we can start the meeting with, hey, were any of your questions unanswered from all that stuff that we sent you before? And then, especially on the agent side, if they're like, no, I didn't have a chance to go through that, I'm not going to prioritize time with that person who hasn't invested any time into understanding who we are before I really start to like pitch or talk to this person, right? So it really helps me understand the mindset of the person as well. When you provide different layers or what you would call barriers, what I would just call some important information, some fact finding, if they're not willing to dig into that, then it tells me something about that person. On the other hand, I wouldn't treat a buyer or a seller the same way who didn't have a chance to go through that information. That's a very different type of dynamic that there could have been a number of reasons that that person didn't do that. But anyway, that's kind of a long way to answer your question. Yes, you can set up multiple different link types that have different workflows attached to them. And remember, when I'm using words like workflow and whatever, these aren't complicated things. When you sign up to Calendly right now, anybody here with very little technical know-how can just immediately log into Calendly and create an event right now. And then they make it so easy with AI assistance in there now. So all of you guys, hopefully at some point, will at least roll with that. That will helping people connect with you be way easier. And to clarify that video comment that Amy noted on, so that video is basically what you probably have already seen through Emma. It's like a virtual sales type page. So if you want to understand more about that, there's an amazing resource, and I've been all in it like a textbook lately. It's the Alex Hormozi $100 million
Leads.
100 million. Sorry, thank you. $100 million leads book, which, you know, between Alex Hormozi's $100 million leads and oh my God, I'm drawing blanks on names. Sabri Subi. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the title as well. Look up Sabri.
What's the name of his book? Ryan, what's the name of his book?
Sell Like Hell?
Sell Like Crazy. It's called Sell Like Crazy.
Yeah,
Sabri Subi's book, Sell Like Crazy, and Alex Hormozi's $100 million leads. Treat those two books like textbooks when it comes to this sort of thing. There are step-by-step, like actual live examples on how to do some of the stuff that we're talking about. They have helped me understand this stuff at a high level. And I know Amy and Ryan work very closely with somebody who understands it even better than I do. So that's one thing, is just so back to the whole idea of getting organized. So we're getting organized with our needs before we ask anybody for anything. But to carry that conversation further, you know, we need a certain task to happen, but we also, you know, have to understand what that goal is for that automation or that workflow. And we'll talk about some systems to help you kind of do those after. But one thing that I started considering, which actually helped getting some responses to some of these automations, was to understand how I want the person who's on the receiving end of some of these task triggers and things like that, how do I want them to feel, you know, during this thing too? Like, what is like the vibe we're trying to set, if it's with a buyer or if it's with a seller or with whatever? The reason I say that is because when I first started with these automations, so for example, when on our team, we use a system called Airtable to manage our projects, from listings to buyer workflows and all that stuff. It's like an Asana, but like beefier. Anybody can dig into it. So with Airtable, I had, you know, when you move a property from available to like sold conditional, or you'd call that maybe pending in the States, it's not closed yet, but it's a done deal, no contingencies, no conditions, nothing like that. Once you move it into that, there was this excited email that was like, hey, congratulations, you've sold, the buyer can't back out now, kind of thing. But you would agree maybe that not all sales are positive experiences because of divorces and other things, right? So when you're creating these automations, you have to really be conscious of how the receiving party might receive that email. So unless you're prepared to make a bunch of different automations depending on the type of you know, client you have, or like the dynamic between the sellers or whatever, I would recommend you not get so fluffy and excited in those emails and keep them, you know, to facts and business. That way you don't trigger emotions. And this came up for us when we had all these awesome automations with, hey, congratulations, you're sold. But then imagine that goes out to a divorcing couple who's in a heated dispute over you know, some sort of childcare is the word coming to mind, but that's not the word, but you know what I'm saying, right? So be very cautious of the tone you're using in some of these automated emails and texts that go out, understanding that it might not always be received by people that are too excited to get to the finish line with what you're helping them with. Does that land for you guys? Do you hear that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But again, the most important part is just to get started with this stuff and kind of fine tune as you go. The good news is pretty tough to make a huge mistake in this scenario as long as you're trying to move down this road. But secondly, or thirdly, or wherever we're at right now, once you've identified all these different buckets, within those buckets, the easiest way to figure out what you need to actually do, and when you're asking for help, people who are going to be able to help you need absolute clarity. And I find that sometimes it's really hard to explain to people what we're trying to do because we really don't know, because we haven't organized properly. So we've all got a bunch of repetitive tasks that probably happen for each type of deal. In the chat, can you guys maybe put in some examples of what you think might be some repetitive tasks that we do every day? Let's say for buyers, let's say we've done the deal, and there's some contingencies or conditions that need to be dealt with. Like, can you think of anything that might need to happen during that time that you do all the time? And just don't even chat, just say it if you can think of something.
Book home inspections.
Right. So home inspections. What else?
Sending paperwork to mortgage brokers or lawyers.
Fair. Yep. And anyway, so not to go into, so reminder to watch finances, not spend money. Exactly. Melinda, actually, that's really, really good. And it's in line with what I was just going to say next, along with Ryan just also said. So every single buyer transaction needs to be in the hands here in Toronto of the person handling the financing. So either the mortgage broker or the bank or the lawyer. We need a, so we don't do closings like you guys do in the States over there. We're not there on closing day and stuff. And a lot of the things happen prior to closing, and that's what the lawyer does. But like, how many times have you said, hey, here are the documents, here are the documents, here are the documents, here are the documents. Like, you've just sent that email over and over and over again. However, if you just make one little tweak to your deal submission process and just consider using a system like Airtable, which is relatively simple to set up, or you can even set up this automation through Gmail templates if you use Gmail for your main business. I'm not quite sure if Outlook has the same thing, but it probably does. I just don't use Outlook. You can have immediately emails going with a Google link to the lawyer, to the mortgage broker, to whoever else is identified as part of that deal right away each time. Now, I'm not going to get into like how to actually do that, but what I'm going to help you guys understand right now is that you don't have the luxury of like digging your head in the sand, burying your head in the sand when it comes to this kind of technology if you're trying to scale a business or become a business leader. All of us here have to stop using the words, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, it's just not in my wheelhouse. And I would agree that maybe you presently have difficulty understanding these things. However, if you're intentional about trying to move this stuff forward and you really want to scale a business and spend less time doing it, then this is super important. But that leads me to the next point. Like, first of all, there are a million videos on YouTube for you to start researching this stuff, but that's not where I'm getting at. Over here, once you've got all this stuff organized, is everybody familiar with the websites like Fiverr?
Yep.
And perhaps there are many, many other websites like Fiverr. What I'm saying is, once I have an idea of what I want, or who I want to do this thing for, what type of transaction it is for, and have a very specific, detailed, itemized list of every single moment in that deal process, from doing the deal with the buyer to actually the day that the property closes. And this is where the work comes in. You're not going to be able to call somebody to help you with this stuff and say, hey, I sell real estate in Toronto and I need to help create automations for my process when I sell properties to a buyer. That's going to confuse somebody who you're talking to. However, if you say, hey, I'm a real estate agent in Toronto and I work with a lot of buyers and I'd like to automate my buyer process, here's what my buyer system looks like. Day 1, day 2, day 3, like here's what happens. This is where the work is. You got to create an Excel spreadsheet and itemize one after another what you do. You're going to start with one list and you're going to fill in stuff as you remember. This isn't like a one-day task. Next time you're going through a buyer transaction, map this stuff out. And then you're going to go to Fiverr and you're going to type in Automation Pro, AI expert, whatever it is, and you're going to tell them what you need. And they're going to do it for you for like $40. And you're going to have that done just like that. And they're going to be there to help you do the rest of it as well. So you don't need to become an expert in this stuff because that's not your wheelhouse, but you do need to have a basic understanding of this stuff before you can hand it off to somebody to help you do this. All of this depends, like if you want to. I want to, because I want to spend less time doing repetitive administrative and other mundane tasks and spend more time focusing on my clients. So I'm not saying you have to do this, but on that note, I'm just going to say just a couple of tools that I use to help me with these things, like Fiverr, amazing. The one tool that I've moved from Zapier to, you guys know Zapier or Zapier or however you pronounce it. It's an automation tool that connects, sorry, not automation. It's an automation tool that connects programs that don't normally talk to each other. So if you need your CRM to do something that's triggered by your email or whatever it is, that's the place to go. I've moved from Zapier to Make.com. Make.com is built for people like us who aren't as technologically savvy. It used to be called Integromat. Make.com is a place that is much more visual than Zapier, And it allows you to create automations and have programs talk to each other that even Zapier can't at the level that Make does. And Make is cheaper. For those, yeah, Ryan in the chat is right. If you're not tech savvy, you're going to want to take advantage of make.com, but you may not be able to get the automation to the finish line. For what I do is I'm good enough with these things to get to about 60 or 70%. I don't have time to troubleshoot errors in there. So once I get to the point where I can't figure it out and there's an error, I give myself like 30 minutes to an hour to figure something out. If I've not figured it out in that time, then I just go to Fiverr.com and I either talk to a pro that I've worked with before, or I look for a new one. And I say, hey, here's what I've built. Here's my login to make.com. Here's what I want to do. Fix it. And then we start a conversation. It's been an absolute game changer for me because, you can raise your hand if you agree with me here. I've always felt like I just wasn't good enough to do the things that I wanted to do, and other people that did them were just better. They were smarter, all those things. All of that was BS. There's not one person here that's able to take like serious automations and AI technology to the level that it needs to for us. It shouldn't be. We sell real estate. So it's okay to not be able to do this on your own, but it's just not okay to bury your head in the sand and say, it's just not for me. I don't understand it. But again, if you want to scale a business and grow your real estate business, this is where you need to be. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this is awesome. And the recommendation of make.com is so good because going back to Alex Hormozy, I saw he made a post on the weekend and he's like, a lot of us get confused about being a good operator and saying we're not a good operator. And we think good operators have to be great at systems, but great operators are actually just great at delegating. And it made me have this aha moment of like, I think this is why a lot of like small businesses get stuck, because we confuse people who are great with systems as great operators, and we make them our operators, but they're not actually good at delegating. So they can't go to Fiverr and find someone who's going to be able to do good work for them and implement the systems they actually need. They're good at building some small systems themselves, but they're not good at actually operating the business and delegating and finding people who can actually do the tasks that they need done.
And I agree with you. And my struggle with delegating in the past, I don't think was my inability to delegate, because I was very happy to delegate. I was just not doing enough work to set up the delegate for success. So it would end up in failure. And then I would deem my effort a failure in as a whole, and then get down about the whole idea of what we were doing. And I had this realization as I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with members of the team and other local realtors here. And the number one missing piece was not being able to effectively help the person you're trying to delegate to understand the vision. It was I've done no work on this. I have an idea. I need you to execute that idea. You're not paying somebody enough to do that. I can tell you that right now. Unless you've got a 6-figure plus salary on your team, you're not paying somebody enough to do that. You most likely are dealing with a coordinator or a manager level position, or probably most likely a coordinator level position within your team or elsewhere. These people need like your vision clearly explained. The work needs to be done in advance, and they need to take that work and plug it into the system you've asked them to plug into. Not that you've got to say, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this. That's not what I'm talking about. It's once you help somebody understand the vision and exactly what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to help somebody feel, then you can articulate that into a message to the delegate so they can actually deliver. Because first of all, what is the measure of success or failure anyway? When you've tried to delegate, have you said, this needs to be done by this time, and this is what I feel would make it a success? Like, you have to use these words, right? It's, if this is not done by this time based on these requirements, then it is not a success. You've got to have something to actually measure so you can manage it. So, it's just like we do with the team agents. If you've done a goal setting session with me, and then you revisit me at our quarterly review session, and then we're talking about how you're not where your business isn't where you wanted it to be, Well, let's look back at your daily form that you're supposed to fill out about how many conversations you've had, how many meetings you've had, how many coffee dates you've booked, how many, people did you expand your network by? If those numbers don't match your actual goal, then we have something to talk about. But otherwise, we're just sitting there talking about why you didn't become successful for some reason and making all these philosophical assumptions about it without really measuring what we're talking about. And that's the kind of spinning wheels I'm done with. Like, I'm finished with that kind of spinning wheels. Like, you need absolute clarity when you're speaking to these people, and you can't have absolute clarity until you've done the work to really understand what you're trying to achieve and the steps involved in achieving that. Now that you've got your analog steps, you need to take it to somebody to digitize that and automate it. I think you're muted, right?
Yeah, I muted myself because my dogs were barking, so and I forgot.
Okay.
So we had a good question here, but how do we know where to start? Like, what part of our job?
So that's a good question. So tomorrow, that's my mom's name. Nice. That's a question more I would bounce back at you. Like, I would say to you, like, what are you trying to do with your business right now, and what's taking up a lot of your time? So if you don't have, I mean, you have SOPs here. If you don't have any SOPs, this is what we're talking about. With no SOPs, you cannot have clear direction. So I would start at SOPs, and those are standard operating procedures, in case you don't know what SOPs are. And that means, let's say, for example, today, our operations manager decided to quit today. We have an entire Google spread. It's not even in one of our, Airtables or whatever. It's in the simplest place. We have a Google spreadsheet that has the task. It has and a link to a Loom video with either me or somebody else who knows how to do that thing, walking somebody through how to do that thing, or helping somebody understand what that specific task is. So if you don't have anything like that, so you can use Loom, Loom, or you can use something called Tango. Tango is actually a pretty cool tutorial thing to create SOPs. Not only does it record your screen while you're trying to walk somebody through something, but as you move your mouse to places, it actually screenshots those things you want somebody to see and adds it to a workflow document with the screenshots as evidence aside from the video. So whoever you're showing it to will see a video of you walking through the task you're trying to automate or delegate, and then they'll have a document that has it with screenshots and explanations, like you would if you go to a website for a company you're working with, you're trying to troubleshoot something that they, one of their services or products. So all of these things are so accessible to us and not complicated at the level you think they are. I would just start by creating as many SOPs as you can. So task, make a video of yourself doing the task. That's the basic level of SOP. I'm sure we can all do that, right? I think we can. So, like, hopefully that answers your question. So once you get to SOPs, then that will identify a whole list of stuff. Okay, well, in this process, we got a whole bunch of emails going out, the same for all clients, no matter what kind of deal it is. Okay, let's start automating there, right? And then we can start talking to these automation pros and whoever else. And then we just start with one little piece of it. And then you start pulling it all together. You don't think you have to automate your entire business at once. Let's just start identifying small things and start hitting them. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Tango.
it does. Thank you, Ara.
Tango, Billy. Tango.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. Is like, the way I always look at it is, where should I start? Is what's taking up the most amount of my time, or what tasks do I do over and over again that are not the highest and best use of my time, right? Like, I think that's just the easiest, and everyone's going to be different.
So one thing I just remembered, Ryan, is a big concern that I had, especially when you're outsourcing overseas to VAs or Fiverr people or whatever. It's like, well, I don't want to give my password to all my things to these people because I don't know who they are, and they have to access very, sensitive things sometimes. So just use a password manager where you can give people access to things. They don't necessarily see your password. Personally, I use 1Password, the number 1, and then the word password.com. So in there, they have things called vaults. And in the vaults, you have, like, I have one for Fiverr. So it has all of my logins for various things I'm asking Fiverr people to do. And then those accesses expire after a certain number of time, or you can set it so somebody only uses it once. I have a paid version, which is like $3 or $4 a month. But these password managers are very, very effective, and it got me over the fear of giving people that I don't know my password. So I found it super helpful. Let's get into some questions. Do you guys have any like specific like things you're struggling with that I can help you through? First of all, give me some like yahoos or yays in the chat. Like I need some energy. Today I'm like
I think this has
vibing
been
really
awesome.
low.
I think this has been super awesome. You've already given like a bunch of easy to use and immediately implementable websites and steps people should be taking. So I think this has been super helpful.
Well, thanks. I think so. I think it's there we go. Some claps, some yays. Thank you. I just need to feel some of this a little bit. It's just one of those days, you know? God. Thank you.
It's good stuff, Ara. It's really good stuff. It's tactical. It's all something that there's something that everybody could walk away with and implement and start an aspect of automation. So
yeah, just don't be shy of this stuff, right? I mean, it's just all of this is available to us. Just, you know, to go back to what we talked about at the beginning, just try not to get sucked into the bright, shiny object of those TikTok and Reels that tell you they're going to solve your problems with just one click of a thing. These guys are just building their email databases, just like you should be, by the way. But a lot of them have very extremely prohibitive costs to get to the stuff they're trying to sell you. So like you don't need to spend a whole bunch of money on this stuff. Like maybe a maximum of $20 to $30 a month on like a couple of subscription-based things you might need for this, like the password manager. But Calendly entry level, it's free if you've only got like one or two event types in there. You don't have to spend money on that. Make.com in general is like 20 some odd dollars a month if you use it at the beefier level that I might, but they have free options as well. And all of this is really more helpful if you do have some sort of project management system in the background. So if you're not running any project management system outside of like a Google Sheet or something like that, really dig into like an Asana or an Airtable and know that these are very intimidating programs when you haven't set them up at all. However, there is a lot of support and help for you out there to do that. And if you have random questions, like my Instagram DMs are like a, tech support line sometimes with people asking me stuff. So, that's the best place to follow me is Instagram. So it's at Ara Mammo, ARAMAMMO. That's where I'm on Instagram. And that's where you'll find the easiest access to me. But to answer another question here, do you connect your Calendly to your CRM? And is it your CRM that sends out the automation to your buyer guide and all that stuff? So yes and no. The CRM is connected to all things because that's where all contacts end up, right? So various Zaps or Make.com automations, no matter how you come into our world, one of the steps in our processes is to add you to our CRM and then tag you appropriately. However, a lot of these automations exist within the native apps or programs. Airtable connects with our Gmail, which is our Google Workspace, meaning all the emails that come out, looks like all the emails that come out come from Airtable. You don't need anything to connect it. It's within there. When you go into Airtable and Asana at the top, it'll say automations in each field that you're in. Just click on that and start playing with it. There's a training mode. So if you go to the right, it'll say training mode. So you can't mess anything up. So look for training mode options and all the things that you're using as well. So yes, it is connected, but it's not the source of all the outgoing emails. And you don't want your CRM to be the source of outgoing emails beyond just your client stuff. Like if you're running ads for your guide and things like that, you really would rather have that come through like a MailChimp or something like that. But again, that's just a preference for me, or high level or whatever else it is that you're using. But don't need to get into those details. The process seems very overwhelming at the onset. Do you have a guide or framework that you recommend following? Yes, it is overwhelming at the onset. That's why it's very important to follow the initial framework that I mentioned. So you need to sit down and identify who it is that you want to help with these automations. And aside from yourself, I mean, what kind of transaction are you trying to help here? So write down the word buyer and just start writing down all the things that you do for your buyer client from the moment you meet them until they close. But again, if you're just been like willy-nilly working with random people as they come into your life without a proper system, this is your call to start setting up systems. Here's what it looks like to work with me as a buyer. You should have an answer to that question. It's not like, oh, I cater my experience differently to this type of person or that type of person. You're going to go broke thinking that way. Like we're trying to scale businesses here. You need to have a core system that's the same for everybody. I'm not saying talk to everybody in the same way, okay? I'm just saying there's a standard system that has to be the same for everybody. So if it feels overwhelming to you, you probably don't even have a system yet, which is good because now we're identifying it. And I don't want to assume and put words in your mouth. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to insult. I'm just saying that it was super overwhelming to me when I didn't know where to start. And I didn't know where to start because I didn't have a system in place. Once there was a system in place, that started to map things out a little more clearly. So think about what that process looks like for you. What does it look like to work with you as a buyer's agent? Start to finish. What do you do? Map that out. That's where you start.
Awesome.
And what do we got here? How often do you find switching your system? How often are you finding you are switching your software systems? Never. The idea of switching off of Airtable to something else makes me want to jump off this ledge right here. That won't happen unless there's something crazy that I can't do with it. And my business is not complicated, and neither is yours, enough to not use one of these systems and change systems. The best system to use is the one you're going to use. There's not one that's like amazing and one's not. At like the similar price point, they're all similar. So just pick one and use it. But systems don't matter when you're trying to identify what your selling system is. That's you. You create that. And then you let it fit into whatever programs you got out there.
Yeah. And open to close is an alternative. If you're looking like for a free project management system, Notion is a great option for free as well. That, is for those of you who are, currently using Excel spreadsheets. Notion is like an upgrade to Excel spreadsheets, and is super good and is free. Lots of big businesses run off Notion. It won't have some of the capabilities of, Airtable or Monday.com or some of the paid project management systems, but it's still, for a lot of your businesses, Notion will be able to do a lot of what you need it to do. Leveraging things like make.com and so on and so forth will be able to do almost everything that Airtable does. As well as, and sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, when you said spreadsheet, that triggered something in me. The moment this stuff became a little, no, not in a bad way, I mean, triggered a thought. The moment this stuff became more clear to me is when I started seeing all these project management apps and softwares as spreadsheets, because that's what they are. When you look at Airtable, it looks so cumbersome and like difficult, but it's just a beefy Excel sheet that has a whole bunch of different stuff built into it. You can do exactly the same things you can with Airtable, Asana, Monday, Notion in an Excel sheet, but you have to code all that into a sheet, which I'm assuming
you just have to connect a million different tools where they give you a lot of the tools already built in.
So these companies exist because they saw the need for something more custom than Sheets, than Google Excel, or sorry, than Excel or Sheets. So Airtable, the grid, and all those things, these are all just Excel sheets that are fed by forms and things like that. It's so much simpler than I initially thought. When you start thinking of all these things, systems that you use as just spreadsheets that have been modified and beefed up, everything becomes a little clearer. Just look at it through that lens next time, and maybe send me a DM on Instagram and let me know if that helped you at all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Sorry, can we get a quick recap? So first, is it identifying our systems, right? Or if we have any systems?
Yeah, so I'll give you a general recap of what we talked about without talking too much, hopefully. So the number one, get organized, okay? And by get organized, I mean define the types of clients that you work with. Also, not forgetting the administrative side of things. I would probably start on the administrative side of things personally. I would start on standard operating procedures for how you process deals, how you work with buyers, how you work with sellers, investors, tenants, landlords, whatever it is. I would start there. What does that look like with you? If you have a system already, great. You're already 70% of the way there. If you don't have a system, create a system. Call it something. The Ryan Wykes buyer mastery system, or the Ryan Wykes selling the crap out of real estate system, and make that for sellers, for buyers, for whatever. Itemize what to do under each one of those transaction types, and then create a vision around what you're trying to do and find somebody who can help you execute it. And by find somebody, I mean go to fiverr.com, type in automation, AI, Airtable, follow-up boss, whatever it is you're trying to work with. There will be a pro that comes up, and it will be way less expensive than you think. Copy and paste your vision to them and start a conversation. You don't need to give them your vision right off the bat. No pressure. Just take the pressure off yourself. This is new to you guys. It was new to me at one point too. There's no pressure. It's just an opportunity. You've got this stuff and you've got people there to help you. You just need to help them understand how they can help you. And that's what we're talking about here. So just do it. Do it once. It's going to cost you maybe $50 at the end of the day and you don't get it done, fine. You've learned a $50 lesson. And I think that's it. That's like as basic a recap as you can have, I think. I mean, just
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
There's so much
Really good,
good stuff.
Ara.
Like, Ara, you made this so simple for all of us. You know, I think a lot of us have been jumping on all these calls about automating your business and AI in your business, and it kind of gets overwhelming and we don't even know where to start. I think you gave us a really simple way to start. It was super helpful. Guys, the one thing I wanted to add is I have a lot of clients that, and I just had this thought when Ara was wrapping this up, is I have a lot of clients that get VAs and then they're like, I don't have enough work for my VA to do. You need to teach your VA to be a delegator. Get your VA to be the one that's going to Fiverr.com and finding the person that can do the work. Don't expect your VA to be able to figure it all out, right? They're not tech people. So leverage your VA to be the delegator. That would be my biggest piece of advice for those of you who have assistants or VAs. Trust them to find the people so you're not spending your time doing it if you have that ability.
I mean,
All
that's
right,
a great
guys.
reminder, Ryan. Oh, you're wrapping up. Sorry, I was just going to say one thing.
Yeah.
If you guys need any help on the VA front, there's actually a member of our brokerage community. Her name's Maggie Wells, and she's been going all in on the whole VA stuff. So if you can look her up, Maggie Wells, realtor in Kentucky. She's got great info. She's at Real Broker. Yeah, she's an awesome human. I talked to her a couple of weeks ago about VAs and how to handle them. But last thing on that VA topic, like if your VA doesn't do something right, don't just say, oh, I'll do it myself. See, I told you nobody else can do it. No, you didn't set them up for success. Take some ownership, and help them understand what you're trying to do better, and they will do it. Don't fall into the trap of just like, see, I told you they can't do it, and then you end up doing it again, okay?
Awesome.
That is the last thing I will say about it. Thank you guys for being here.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Ara. Guys, this was great. Please join us again next week. Same time, same place, where we're going to get more actionable items that you can implement into your business right away so that we can all have the best 2024 and beyond. Thank you for joining us at Monday Rocket Fuel. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
12
Thanks,
p.m.
Ara.
Eastern, 9 a.m.
Have the best
Pacific.
week, you guys.
Thanks, Ara.